Hello, everybody. Crucial topic, crucial sector of our economy, as both Prime Ministers underlined earlier today. We will start today with the welcoming remarks from both ministers. I would like to welcome to the floor Minister of Energy and Coal Industry in Ukraine, Mr. Prodan. If you could please open the floor for everybody.
Доброго дня, шановний пане міністр, шановні учасники дискусії. Перш за все, я дозвольте висловити сьогодні подяку організаторам Українсько-Норвезького бізнес-форуму за включення енергетичної тематики до порядку денного заходу. Сьогоднішня ситуація в енергетичному секторі України є досить непростою. Більшість часу, а також фінансових ресурсів, уряд і бізнес, що працює в енергетиці, практично уділяють подоланню кризової ситуації. Це дуже важка робота, оскільки джерела існуючих серйозних проблем, які сьогодні вирішує Україна в енергетичній сфері, знаходяться, власне, поза енергетичною галуззю і навіть поза межами України. Це окупація Криму, це ініційована Російською Федерацією також газова криза, яку частково ми вирішили на осінньо-зимовий період. Це серйозне руйнування наших енергетичних інфраструктур на сході України внаслідок неоголошеної агресії Російської Федерації. Але той факт, що в цій непростій ситуації сьогодні в Україні проходить бізнес-форум, свідчить про те, що міжнародний бізнес, в першу чергу це бізнес демократичних країн, з ринковою економікою вірить в те, що існуючі проблеми ми подолаємо, і українська економіка буде розвиватися, і в тому числі і українська енергетика. Користуючись нагодою, я хотів би коротко окреслити ті пріоритети, над якими сьогодні працює уряд в енергетичній сфері, аби дати відповідні сигнали норвезьким бізнес-структурам, що мають сьогодні зацікавленість і мають наміри сьогодні працювати в енергетичному секторі України. Перш за все, це діяльність нашого уряду, вона пов'язана з забезпеченням енергетичної безпеки держави. Головні зусилля уряду сьогодні зосереджені на диверсифікації джерел постачання природного газу та економному його використанні, а також диверсифікації постачань інших паливних ресурсів. Це, звісно, ядерне паливо. Це останнім часом ми займаємось також і диверсифікацією поставок вугілля, тому що частина вугільної галузі знаходиться сьогодні в руках озброєних терористів, і частина шахт сьогодні не працює. Протягом останніх 6 місяців ми реалізували ряд організаційних та технічних заходів щодо збільшення реверсних поставок газу з території країн Європейського Союзу, в тому числі Словаччини, і ми на сьогоднішній день маємо співробітництво в енергетичній галузі, досить серйозне співробітництво в енергетичній галузі компанії НАК «Нафтогаз» і «Статойлу». Це реверсні постачання газу з Норвегії, що є важливим елементом сьогодні підвищення енергетичної безпеки нашої країни. Я думаю, що співробітництво в цій галузі, ці комерційні контракти, це співробітництво буде продовжуватися, і ми будемо збільшувати, і маємо наміри збільшувати відповідні поставки газу з Норвегії. Сьогодні ми розпочали процес поетапного проведення цін на природний газ для населення до економічно обґрунтованого рівня. Це дуже теж важливий сигнал, я вважаю, для інвесторів. Це має створити додаткові стимули для споживачів, більш економно використовувати природний газ, а з іншого боку, це підвищує привабливість бізнесу на ринку постачання природного газу і на ринку, а також це є стимулом для збільшення видобутку газу в Україні. Звісно, пріоритетний напрямок сьогодні – це впровадження реформ в енергетичній галузі, в тому числі і в газовому секторі. Реформи в українському газовому секторі в кінцевому рахунку дозволять реально інтегрувати його в єдиний європейський газовий простір. Серед важливих вже здійснених кроків у цьому напрямку є прийняття закону про внесення змін до деяких законів України щодо реформування системи управління єдиною газотранспортною системою України. Реформування НАК «Нафтогазу» передбачає створення на його основі за участю компаній з Європи та Сполучених Штатів, компаній-операторів, які будуть займатися експлуатацією української газотранспортної системи та також підземних сховищ газу. Ми вважаємо, що бізнес з транспортування природного газу території України на довгострокову перспективу, навіть з урахуванням конкуренції з боку альтернативних маршрутів, має серйозні перспективи, і ми запрошуємо сьогодні норвезькі компанії до співпраці в цьому напрямку. Більш того, ми пропонуємо включити українську газотранспортну систему до проєктів будівництва європейських газових інтерконекторів та створення на основі українських мереж та сховищ природного газу східноєвропейського газового хабу. Цю точку зору також підтримують як політичні інституції ЄС, так і міжнародні фінансові організації. На цьому тижні ми розпочинаємо переговори з ЄБРР та Європейським інвестиційним банком щодо початку першого етапу реалізації проєкту модернізації газопроводу Уренгой-Помари-Ужгород. Норвезькі компанії також можуть брати участь у постачаннях та роботах, що заплановані в рамках цього проєкту. Це стосується також і інших проєктів, що сьогодні здійснюються за підтримки міжнародних фінансових установ. А це проєкти, які ми сьогодні здійснюємо в галузі передачі електричної енергії, проєкти щодо підвищення безпеки атомних електростанцій, а також проєкти в енергозбереженні. Іншим напрямком співробітництва може бути також відновлення енергетичної інфраструктури, пошкодженої внаслідок бойових дій на сході України. Відновлення енергетичної інфраструктури, яке буде здійснюватися на сході України, має здійснюватися на основі сучасних технологій, що забезпечують високий рівень надійності та стійкості енергетичної системи. Норвегія має виключно ефективний державний енергетичний сектор. Ми також в Україні маємо значну частку активів в державному секторі, і тут нам дуже допоможе норвезький досвід у сфері державного управління енергетичними активами. І нарешті Україна має значний невикористаний потенціал у сфері енергозбереження і енергоефективності. У цій сфері перспективи мають не тільки бізнес, постачання обладнання, але й інвестиційне співробітництво. Те ж саме стосується використання в Україні відновлюваних джерел енергії. Україна з урахуванням значної залежності від зовнішніх енергетичних ресурсів прийняла законодавство, що стимулює розвиток відновлюваних джерел. В останні роки бізнес у цій галузі розвивається досить швидкими темпами. Тільки за 2012 та 2013 роки встановлена потужність відновлюваних джерел в Україні збільшилась майже в 3 рази. Ми також суттєвий приріст відновлюваних джерел енергії очікуємо і в цьому році. Дуже дякую за увагу та бажаю учасникам сьогоднішнього заходу та сьогоднішнього діалогу успіхів в роботі.
Mr. Prodan.
Thank you, and we will pass the floor over to Mr. Vidar Helgesen. Mr. Helgesen is the Norwegian Minister of EU and EEA Affairs and also Minister at the Prime Minister's Office.
As we know, energy plays a key role in any society and economy, and we do recognize the importance of new, effective energy policies for recovery and future growth in Ukraine. Ukraine's goals, as outlined by Prime Minister Yatsenyuk this morning, to reform its energy markets, to eliminate subsidies, to achieve greater energy independence, diversify supplies, and make energy production and energy use more efficient, are sound goals. We look forward to seeing these goals turned into credible and sustainable plans that can attract interest and investment from a large number of companies and countries. It is particularly important that a transparent regulatory system in line with international standards is in place from the outset. We see no reason why Ukraine should not in the medium term move from being a net importer of energy to being self-supporting. Ukraine's potential for saving energy, as the minister has underscored, is considerable. Many energy sources are underdeveloped. Enhancing gas recovery at existing fields is one important opportunity. Ukraine's vast bioenergy resources and its potential for wind power represent solid basis for new development. Norway's own experience as an energy nation has shown the benefit of working with foreign companies. We have been able to attract foreign investment while at the same time developing our own industries and management systems for the sector. Transparency, competition, predictability, and expertise are keywords in the Norwegian energy history. And as a result, we now have a world-class industry with top-notch companies. Norway is the second largest exporter of gas to the European Union and a contributor, therefore, to European energy security. We estimate that around 2/3 of Norwegian gas reserves are still in the ground, or rather under the seabed. We note and we welcome the fact that Ukraine has started to purchase gas from Norwegian exporters. The volumes may be small so far, but it is a new and interesting development. The gas sales agreement is a purely commercial deal made possible by the pipeline connections between Slovakia and Ukraine and direct contacts between exporters and importers. But even though it's a commercial deal, it does demonstrate how energy infrastructure builds energy security. And as we know, energy security helps building national security. In addition to oil and gas, Norway has considerable renewable energy, in particular hydropower. And hydropower, wind, and bioenergy will continue to grow in importance, increasing from about 60% of our total energy balance today to a planned 67.5% in 2020. These are figures that stand out in an international setting, and they highlight Norway's position as an energy nation, not only with regard to resources, but also when it comes to technology, financing, and market-oriented policies. Renewable energy is an important part of the answer to the overwhelming threat of climate change. We're very glad that Ukraine, too, has ambitious plans in this field, including modernizing and changing its energy mix and reducing pressure on the environment. But much more needs to be done. The successful presidential election in May and the parliamentary elections in October, as well as the association agreement with the European Union and closer relations with many other international partners, mean that Ukraine now has an historic opportunity to renew its society. An improved energy sector that is well integrated into the international market could provide Ukraine with the growth engine it needs to lift itself out of economic distress. Shaping the market will require time and political stamina, including a strong determination to remove old, dysfunctional and corrupt practices. But it can be done. In the meetings that my Prime Minister will have with President Poroshenko and Prime Minister Yatsenyuk today, she will emphasize the potential for energy cooperation in Norway-Ukraine bilateral relations. Our key messages, and the Prime Minister's key messages today, will be that firstly, Norway will increase its financial support for energy efficiency in Ukraine through the EBRD, the Nordic Environment Finance Cooperation, NEFCO, and in cooperation with Norwegian and Ukrainian partners in the energy sector. Secondly, we're prepared to share our experience of developing the Norwegian oil and gas and electricity markets and integrating them with the European Union. Such insights could be useful for Ukraine in its reform and restructuring of the energy sector, whether we're talking about unbundling state-owned companies or increased efficiency. Thirdly, we intend to continue to support contact and cooperation between our respective industries and experts. And finally, Norway is also increasing its cooperation with Ukraine in the field of nuclear and radiation safety. This package of 4 main elements will be developed further in dialogue with Ukrainian colleagues. Our increased support is meant to complement the assistance to Ukraine that is being provided by the European Union, the US, and many other partners, including the 5 Nordic countries. Norway is part of a broad effort to partner with Ukraine. We're both members, Norway and Ukraine, of the European family, and it is in Norway's interest to contribute to building a successful and mutually rewarding partnership with Ukraine. What does take place in Ukraine today is a question of European values and of Europe's future. If Russia's behavior in Ukraine is rewarded, Europe will be a much more dangerous place. If, on the other hand, the choice of the Ukrainian people is respected and rewarded and brought to fruition, the values that made Europe free and prosperous will prevail. And this is why Ukraine's destiny is Europe's destiny and also Norway's destiny. I wish you every success with the forum and with this session, and I look forward to seeing deepened cooperation on energy between Ukraine and Norway. Thank you.
Mr. Badnes has previously worked with the Innovation Norway and the Finnmark County governor. He has a degree from Norwegian University of Science, and he's now a senior investment manager with NEFCO. So, Amund Badnes, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, so,
established by the 5 Nordic countries some 25 years ago, we have financed more than 400 small and intermediate-sized projects of environmental interest to the Nordic countries. We manage some 550 million euros, also for other organizations and other countries. First, to let you know what we are talking about, let me give you one example from eastern Ukraine. The city of Kramatorsk approached us and wanted to improve energy efficiency in 5 educational buildings. By investments of some 3 million grivna, 1.5 million kroner, we were able to do a whole wide array of different measures in energy efficiency. The most important one, installing a substation, allowing to actually use the energy you need and not only what you use or take what you are given. In addition to that, installing new windows, radiators, isolating pipes, etc. By doing this, they were able to save 24% of the energy spent for heat energy spent every year, and this project will be paid back in a little bit more than 4 years. When I labeled this introduction "turning up the heat," I didn't mean literally turning up the thermostat, although if you are able to regulate the heat in your house, then you're already one step ahead in the right direction. What I wanted to say was that the potential is undeniable. I mean, the International Energy Agency, they describes it as enormous and estimates a 25% potential for energy efficiency in Ukraine. There is a need. People need to warm their houses. The municipalities need to balance their budgets. And there is an opportunity. The shock in energy prices creates a willingness for change and a window of opportunity with very much shortened payback time for investments in energy efficiency. And we have the means to contribute. We have a whole array of programs which I will mention. I hope that you are reading while I'm talking, because I have more information on the slides than I have the time to actually tell you. We're working with organizations such as the US AID, the German GIZ, Swedish SIDA, banks such as the EBRD and the European Investment Banks, and on these following programs. The example I gave you was one of our energy savings credits. This is a demonstration program aimed to pave the way for energy efficiency investments in municipalities. Financing up to 90% of the investments in buildings in the social sphere. We offer a very low and interest rate of 3%, and I believe that we are the only international organization offering loans in hryvnia, and this has become hugely popular these days. Together with Swedish SIDA, we are also having a program for the district heating sector. I mean, you have energy efficiency in buildings and you have the district heating networks. And in order to introduce modern technology, we have this program called the Demo Ukraine or Demo Ukraina, offering both a combination of loans and grants as well as technical assistance. For the bigger projects for NEFCO, or medium-sized if you look at it globally, we can offer financing from the NEFCO Investment Fund together with E5P. The E5P is the Eastern Europe Energy and Environmental Partnership and was established during the Swedish presidency of the EU in 2009. It's a multi-donor fund of close to 100 million euros, and it's working that way that they offer grants for buildings as well as district heating, and NEFCO offer loans to municipalities as well as municipal companies under a guarantee from the municipalities. On top of that, just 3 weeks ago, the Nordic foreign ministers met in Stockholm, and they decided to support energy efficiency and reconstruction in eastern Ukraine and southern Ukraine. The assistance will be provided through NEFCO, and it will focus on the refurbishment and reconstruction of municipal buildings in these affected and vulnerable areas. Emphasis will be made on social infrastructure such as daycare centers, schools, health centers, the sum which is allocated for this year is 2 million euros, and more funds are promised for next year. So, since this is a business conference, I thought I could say something about business opportunities in the end. Within energy efficiency, we have the need for specialized consultancy services. We use both local and international experts to both prepare, assist in preparing, and supervising our projects. This morning, we had State Secretary, Vice Minister Ayhan visiting a kindergarten, 573 in the Abalon district, together with our supervising consultant, NUCC, Norwegian company, present here today. And this is one of many projects which is executed in the city of Kyiv with energy efficiency and financed by NEFCO. More substantial in sums is the opportunity for equipment delivery and works. For smaller projects, this is procured locally. For the bigger projects with international tendering, but this is an opportunity. For the Ukrainian companies, I mean, NEFCO is not only energy efficiency and it's not only municipalities, but Ukrainian companies have the opportunity to get financed projects through our cleaner production program. That could be for improving production processes, for producing renewable energy, as well as energy efficiency. For Norwegian companies, provided that there is some quantifiable environmental effect in the project, we can offer through our NUBF fund support for feasibility studies, investigating, establishing business, or we can participate as an investor and share the risk by giving a loan or being a shareholder in established companies here. And in this respect, Innovation Norway, which is at least at the conference, also have an investment fund which can be a partner. Examples of this, we have one biogas plant in western Ukraine. It's a Danish company, a pig farm, where we financed the biogas plant, which was one of the first ones to receive green tariffs for biogas in Ukraine. In Odessa, we have a factory, or we have financed a factory producing waterborne bait. And we would like to add some more Norwegian examples to this list. For any questions regarding operations here in Ukraine, we have a very competent Kyiv office, Ms. Yulia Shevchuk. I recommend contacting her for any suggestions and ideas. And for Nordic companies, you can also contact me in Helsinki. So thank you for the attention and good luck with the conference.
So, Mr. Shevchuk, the floor is yours.
Доброго дня, шановні учасники форуму. З вашого дозволу я хочу представити потенціал України в розвитку відновлювальних джерел енергії. І це я хочу зробити на базі національного плану дій до 2020 року, який ми прийняли кілька місяців тому, відповідно до наших зобов'язань перед енергетичним європейським співтовариством. Я хочу додати, що буквально на минулому тижні цей національний план з відновлювальної енергетики ми мали можливість представити у Відні, в Австрійському енергетичному агентстві, а також в енергетичному співтоваристві у пана Копача. Хочу звернути увагу, що Україна в минулому році спожила 50 мільярдів кубічних метрів газу. В тому числі промисловість в нас спожила 20 мільярдів кубічних метрів. Підприємства, які генерують теплову енергію, спожили 8,5 мільярдів кубічних метрів. Населення спожило близько 17 мільярдів кубічних метрів. І бюджетні організації, це школи, дитячі садки, лікарні, спожили близько 1 мільярда кубічних метрів. При цьому це значно більше, ніж, наприклад, наша сусідня Польща, яка має в кілька разів більший валовий внутрішній продукт, при цьому споживає газу менше. Хочу зазначити, що з цих 50 мільярдів кубічних метрів газу, які ми спожили в минулому році, лише 20 мільярдів – це газ власного видобутку. Решта нам доводиться купувати в нашого північного сусіда, а також частково залучати реверс. Тому на сьогоднішній день для нас критично важливо зменшити споживання не тільки імпортного російського газу, а в цілому скоротити споживання енергоресурсів, таким чином зупинити відтік валюти із економіки України в газову трубу, а також дати можливість економіці, бізнесу, в тому числі українському, закордонному, залучити кошти для інвестицій в українську альтернативну і відновлювальну енергетику. І в нас для цього є всі підстави. На сьогоднішній день в Україні вже є декілька законодавчих стимулів, пільг для споживання, для скорочення споживання традиційних енергоресурсів і розвитку відновлювальних. При цьому буквально за останні кілька місяців, враховуючи те, що в Україні дефіцит на поточний час 5 мільярдів кубічних метрів газу, ми вжили ряд конкретних заходів з боку уряду щодо стимулів для заміщення в першу чергу газу. По-перше, ми скоротили квоти відпуску газу по регіонам. В середньому це 30%. Крім того, ми дали можливість підприємствам, які вироблятимуть теплову енергію з інших видів палива, крім газу, ми дали можливість їм продавати по привабливому тарифу, продавати тепло по привабливому тарифу. Ми прийняли директиву 28 європейську стосовно європейських підходів по розвитку альтернативної енергії. Також ми прийняли постанову, яка дає можливість населенню брати кредити на закупку твердопаливних котлів, і при цьому ми відшкодовуємо 20% тіла кредиту. Я не буду зупинятися на всіх заходах, які ми прийняли, але і попередня сторінка, і наступні заходи, які ми зараз, які у вас перед екраном, це всі дії уряду, які дали можливість на сьогоднішній день запрацювати ринку тепла в заміні газу. І на сьогоднішній день ми маємо величезний результат. Для порівняння, ще на початку червня у нас заводи, які виробляли твердопаливні котли, в них всі склади були заповнені. Вже починаючи з вересня місяця, замовлень у заводів, в будь-якого заводу, який виробляє твердопаливні котли, вже на сьогоднішній день до січня-лютого місяця. Склади пусті. І це той попит, який створили ми. Але крім того, ми прийняли стратегічний національний план дій з відновлювальної енергетики. Цей план передбачає вже в 2020 році 11% відновлювальних джерел в загальному споживанні енергоресурсів. На сьогоднішній день в Україні відновлювальних 3,9%. Якщо дивитися по галузям, в яких ми будемо заміщувати газ, то це, якщо брати електроенергію, то це і сонце, і вітер, і малий ГЕС, і біоенергетика, і геотермальні. По роках можете звернути увагу, що вже в 2016 році, наприклад, в біоенергетиці у нас має бути встановлених потужностей 380 МВт, а в 2020-му 950 встановленої потужності. І в Україні є потенціал, оскільки ми аграрна країна, і в нас є великі відходи сільського і переробного господарства. Також у нас амбітні цілі і по повітряній енергетиці, і по сонцю. На графіку по рокам видно динаміка встановленої потужності. Якщо взяти тепло і охолодження, то в нас теж тут цілі амбіційні. Також це і біоенергетика, і сонце, і геотермальна. Також в нас великі амбіції в заміщенні рідких біопалив. В транспорті в нас є величезні можливості для виробництва етанолу, біодізеля. І вже в 2015-2016 році нам потрібно побудувати 2 біоетанольних заводи. В 2020-му потреба в біоетанолі 500 тисяч тонн в рік. Це структура до 2020 року відновлювальних. До 2020 року нам потрібно, ми можемо таким чином замістити 6,3 мільярди кубічних метрів газу. Що на сьогоднішній день ми очікуємо? Ми очікуємо від європейської спільноти, від Норвегії в тому числі, можливість технічної допомоги для гармонізації законодавства з Європейським Союзом, для того, щоб всі ці процеси запустити, хоча ми працюємо і самі над ними. Крім того, нам потрібно залучати інвестиції як внутрішні, так і закордонні, в тому числі норвезьких компаній. Також ми створюємо фонд, і про це ми говорили в Відні з паном Копичем, створюємо фонд, який буде давати можливість розвивати як відновлювальні джерела енергії, так і співфінансувати проекти по енергоефективності. Тому я всіх за вас, як представників норвезького бізнесу, запрошую прийняти участь в цих бізнес-проєктах. Дякую.
Mr. Hole, please.
Thank you, and good morning still. Thank you for the invitation. And dear audience, I'm very happy to be here in Ukraine to tell something about a project which we are planning to introduce an energy farm center for bioenergy and renewables in Ukraine. I'm the general manager of the Energy Farm Center for Bioenergy in Norway. As we heard, about 99% of our direct energy use is based on renewables at the Energy Farm Center. And so we try to deliver knowledge and experiences from our own way of doing it to other rural communities, farmers, energy companies, municipalities, etc., who want to increase the use of renewable energy and thus also create new jobs in the local communities. And to emphasize it, it also has to do with the local empowerment, taking care of the energy resources and the whole value chain. We started up in 1991 and are now working to introduce such energy centers in Ukraine, Croatia, Kenya and Myanmar. This is a short overview of what we are doing. It won't be time to go into all those details here, but you can. So I have more presentations here than I will have time to go through. So if you want to go deeper into them, you could look at the NUCC's website. Okay. So what we do is through our training and education programs also try to have those who are attending our courses and education programs to see the whole chain from the raw material to the heated rooms or to the biofuel in the car to the electricity in the grid, etc. And we have a close collaboration with our local region of Hadeland, which here is the energy farm. And there are a lot of bioenergy activities that has been a result of the activities at the energy farm. So, which is, of course, perhaps the most important part of it all, to see how such a competence center could create a higher knowledge and thus also an increased production of renewables based on the local resources. So establishing bioenergy clusters in the region is a very important part of the whole concept. To have a short global view, bioenergy is about 2/3 of the renewables, and as you know, it's a high proportion of non-renewables in the energy system worldwide. Bioenergy is supposed to have one of the biggest potentials. We'll come back to that. And it still is the main or only source of energy for more than 60% of the population on this planet. We have already heard something about bioenergy in general in Ukraine. It's a local and cheap resource of energy, and it's renewable. And the availability of unused land and forest resources are great in Ukraine, but there's a local knowledge and network building, need more demonstration projects and more commercial projects, and also to develop feedstock infrastructure and equipment. The last one is quite important. We think that in order to have have a sustainable production and use of bioenergy, you have to have very careful plans for how to produce and build up the biomass resources and use the byproducts from agriculture, industry, etc. in the right way. So last month we, together with the Norwegian-Ukrainian company NUBF, delivered this plan for the energy farm center in the Ternopil region in the city of Kyiv. And there are a lot of figures here. I won't have time to go through them all, but on the overview you could see that it's possible to take the Ukrainian and not the local approach first. Ukraine could cover close to 40% of its energy needs with biomass in a sustainable way and without having any conflict with the production of food or other uses of biomass, which is quite important. And you are a country very rich in agriculture, land. You have about 30 times more arable or cultivated land than Norway has, for instance. And you are actually setting aside an area which is close to 7 times the cultivated land in Norway. You are not using it at all, so shows that you have the biomass resources are immense in Ukraine. Okay, going back to this plan for the bioenergy center in Kyiv, this is where it is. And here you see it's already some activities at the center, and it's already delivering energy to local municipality uses, like for a kindergarten, for a school, etc. But the ambitions is to have this center to grow up to be a bigger and stronger one. But the activities have been started on a low level. Plans are to increase it in the years to come. And here you see some different information about the areas, how to use the cultivated land to produce bioenergy crops, to take care of the municipality forests, to do thinnings there and use the chips to heat up the local school and hospital, etc. And we will collaborate closely with our energy farm in Norway to build up education plans, etc. Yes, it's important to say that the municipality could, through this project, be self-sufficient with biomass from own resources, which contributes to lower and more stable energy prices and independence of fossil fuels. Could cover the energy needs or the need of natural gas 2.5 times. How long did I have? Okay, so this is a picture overview of the center, which is planned. Partly, some of the activities are already going on. Then at the end, I would like to have a short focus on the IPCC last reports saying that bioenergy could cover, together with bio-CCS, more than 50% of the world's energy need. So it is supposed to be a very important source of energy. And it is, and it's going to be also in the future. This August, we signed a deal with the Indian company TERI, which is led by Dr. Pachauri, who is the chairman of the IPCC. Energy Farm and TERI together made this foundation called the Energy Farm International Foundation, with Dr. Pachauri as the chairman. And we think that that collaboration will really make it stronger, and the possibilities of having good energy centers in rural communities worldwide bigger. So this is the center, how we look, how it should be in the Kyiv region. And thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, First, a brief background from Tafjord and Norway. This is the Zacharias Dam. This is our company's main landmark. It was started the year I was born, in '66. At that time, we had this hydroelectric system supply only our area in Norway. When this dam was completed in '69 and started producing, we had a power line along the west coast of Norway, enabling us to exchange power with other regions and thereby increasing our energy security. In our country, 99% of the electricity production onshore is renewable, mainly hydropower, and this was really what modern Norway was built on. However, with our few inhabitants and large oil and gas industry, we have a high CO2 emission per capita. We have a challenging landscape, but we have still a very reliable electric distribution system with more than 99% uptime. We were also one of the first nations to deregulate the electricity markets, which we did in 1990, and this has been a huge success for our electricity consumers. We are blessed with very cheap power in Norway compared to the rest of Europe. I would say that we as Norwegian consumers, we are spoiled. We have the same relationship to power price as the Venezuelans have to gasoline prices. We produce plenty of it, and it better be damn cheap. And this should also be understood by the policymakers, that public expectation that energy shall be cheap, that's something that every policymaker needs to take into consideration when changing to a new system. I will talk about 3 issues that I and Energy Norway claim is very important for designing the future European energy system. Europe faces common challenges. Will it find common answers? And it has to do with reducing emissions, it has to do with security of supply, and it has to do about how to keep and strengthen the competitiveness. And it's of course no surprise that I say that the answer is electric. Our European Industry Association, Eurelectric, recently made an overall assessment of the future of electricity in the European market in light of the EU climate goals. It's called Power Choices Reloaded. From this assessment, we can draw this simple graph. The blue line represents the reductions in emissions, and the red line the power consumption, the need for power as a result of the climate policies. And the conclusion here is simple. We need to start the transition to electrification now. We need more cables and grids. The future is electric. More details about reducing the emissions. For 2030, the Commission recently agreed, or the European Commission agreed on a 40% reduction for emission reductions. This shows the roadmap to 2050. We see that sharp reductions in emissions will come already towards 2030. And a major insight from the EU process is that the power sector will always be the first in line when it comes to domestic reductions. We cannot move anywhere. We are up for grabs, and we will meet the harshest requirements from the policymakers. And it's clear that emission trading is the key and must be strengthened. But of course, it's also important to stimulate other sectors that are non-ETS, like transport and buildings. But we need to enable more infrastructure for low carbon energy use, facilitate emission-free energy use at the level of the end consumers. In Norway, this is particularly relevant in the transport sector, where we will continue the success of introducing electric vehicles. In Europe, this is also about making better insulated buildings and displace fossil fuel heating. And I'm delighted to hear the results that NEFCO has achieved here in Ukraine, and I look forward to see further progress from these initiatives. The next I will highlight is energy security. These charts illustrate a key element in energy security in Europe. We see on the horizontal line the dependency of gas, or the rate of gas in the energy mix. We see that Netherlands has a very high gas use, and along the vertical line is the ratio of Russian gas. For example, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia and Finland get their natural gas from Russia only. Norway is not included, since we are not using much gas domestically. Neither are Ukraine, but and I don't have the details here, but we all know that you are pretty depending on Russian gas currently. But the main point with this graph is that large nations in Europe, several large nations, has a situation with a dependency of a single source of natural gas. And if we shall improve this, we need to develop our energy markets. We need to displace natural gas with power and bioenergy. The more diversification of energy sources, the more energy security we have. And a massive development of renewable energy will play a crucial role. And this must be coupled with interconnectors to bring the power across Europe. If we can make the market work, yes, we will see from time to time high prices and low prices, but the light will always be on. If capacity markets are promoted, we should respect the EU Commission guidance and promote regional cooperation. This has benefit for all. Denmark and Norway is a perfect example. Our subsea cables and common power market enables the Danes to sell their surplus hydropower to us at windy days. And at the days when the wind doesn't blow, we can supply them with reservoir hydropower. That's a win-win situation for both nations. It's a cooperation based on trust.
Can you wrap up in 1 minute?
Oh, yes. This shows the volatile nature of renewable energy. It's difficult to balance. This is a 5-day period in Germany in 2013, and shows the wind power, the gray, and the solar power, the brown. And we see the demand on the upper gray line. This needs to be paid for, this needs to be balanced, and that's really the key question. That's the system services and how this shall be designed in the future with the high and increasing high intensity of renewable energy, which cannot be turned on and turned off as we plan. But in order to have more security of supply, we need more market, and we need more coordinated market. Norway and Ukraine is not part of the EU, but we need to work through Brussels for a common market also in energy. Last thing I will mention is competitiveness. Climate targets and security of supply opens a large potential for green energy, and I'm glad to hear the visions presented by Mr. Sergei Savchuk here earlier about the visions that you have in Ukraine for renewable energy. We need to improve the markets. We need to cut the existing fossil fuel subsidies. All modern economists know that the subsidies is a bad thing. They also know that dependency on a non-renewables resource is risky. So the solution is more renewables, and I'm glad to see that Ukraine was even more proactive than we were in Norway with the introduction of the green tariff law in 2009. We came after in 2011 with our answer, the electrical green certificates, the law for that. And the further solution is more market and more integration and harmonization across Europe. And the last thing I will say is that renewable energy is distributed and democratic. Fossil energy is centralized with much more potential for power abuse and corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, I'm coming from the Norwegian Water Resources and Energy Directorate, which is a poor government organization in Norway. I have a number of slides here, but many of them I'll pass very fast. Since Mr. Espeseth already has shown a couple of the information I have got here, and it's also a lot of information about NVE, the Norwegian Water Resources and Energy Directorate, and you can read that afterwards. I'll concentrate on a project which we have been implementing in Georgia, and also a last slide about possible hydropower development in Ukraine. Thank you. I'll drop these energy facts since you have already seen some of them, and you can read it afterwards. And also a bit about the history of hydropower in Norway, since the first hydropower station was built in 1890. And just stress here that 89% of the hydropower capacity in Norway is owned by the public. Benefit sharing is a principle in the Norwegian hydropower development. Some of the areas of competence of NVE. Power trade, it was mentioned briefly by Mr. Espeseth. Organization of energy policy in Norway, the Minister of Petroleum and Energy, and you see my department in the middle below there, and we are responsible for all management of Norway's water and energy resources. The working areas of NVE. NVE is also working quite a lot internationally. Until the last 3 or 4 years, it has mainly been in developing countries, where we have been acting as advisors to the Norwegian Agency for Development. But during the last 3-4 years, it has also turned eastward, I would say, to Eastern Europe, where we are acting as advisors directly for the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway. So that's why you see that we have projects and cooperations in a number of East European countries, besides all these developing countries in Africa and Asia. The 5 countries in East Europe, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria, It's various projects there, but a lot of it is aimed at energy efficiency. And also in Bulgaria on the market design. While Georgia, I'm coming back to afterwards. Just as an example, in the developing countries, developing world, these are the areas where we typically are working on. Like this example from Liberia, legal framework, one of the main activities, capacity and competence building, power generation, water resources monitoring, rural energy supply. That's typical for many of the programs in the developing world. Then I'll go to Georgia, which is a country, it's much smaller compared to Ukraine, and it's a mountainous country. So the hydropower potential in Georgia is much higher compared to Ukraine. Some of the hydropower there has been developed, not very much of it, but there are hydropower stations built more than 50 years ago, and there are a number of stations being built today. And there is also one Norwegian company involved there in the southwest, very close to the border of Turkey. And I suppose that's chosen because it's close to Turkey, with the possibilities of export of electricity to Turkey. 3 years ago, we were approached by our Minister of Foreign Affairs in connection with a visit by the Minister of Energy from Georgia coming to Norway, and we were asked to implement some cooperation on government level with Georgia. So we had a preliminary period where we tried to define cooperation areas, and it resulted in this cooperation here, where the main aim or the main goal is to estimate the hydropower potential in the whole country, including construction costs. And that's from small-scale micro hydro to large-scale hydropower development. And you see the various activities, digitizing of all historical hydrometric records. I'll just mention when we arrived or did the preliminary work in Georgia, we had meetings with a number of different organizations, and one of them was USAID, who had been doing quite a lot on hydropower development in Georgia. And their first question was, why are you here? We have already estimated the power potential in Georgia. But when we explained our methodology, and not the least the importance of the hydrometric data, which is the basis for all hydropower development, they fully agreed that this is a very good project. Because then they would also have some quality control on their own estimates. We are in the start phase still. We have completed the 3 first activities, and also starting on number 5 and 6, being run in parallel with the first activities. And we expect to complete it in June 2016. And our partners is the Ministry of Energy of Georgia, which is the main partner, and then it's the National Environmental Agency of Georgia, which is under the Ministry of Environment. And I tried to find out something about the hydropower potential of Ukraine. Unfortunately, I didn't have much time to read the reports, and I visited some net pages, web pages. But then I decided to just look at the rainfall, precipitation in Ukraine, and also look at the relief of the country, the contours, what are the altitudes. And I must admit that when I saw this picture here, it doesn't look too promising for hydropower potential in Ukraine. First, most of the country is very flat. The main relief is in the west, in the eastern part of the Carpathian Mountain, where I suppose there is some hydropower potential. And combined with higher rainfall, of course, in the mountainous areas. So I would expect there be hydropower potential there. Small scale and probably also large scale. Because with the mountainous relief, you have also possibilities for reservoirs, which is very good in an energy mix. And of course, you also have some large rivers. So even if the country is rather flat, with a lot of water, you don't need so many meters to produce hydropower and electricity. But this I don't know. And maybe it could be worthwhile to do some similar exercise like the one we are doing in Georgia.
You'll be surprised to know that Ukraine has more than 100 small hydropower stations already.
Yeah.
So we do have a potential.
But beyond the 100, what is the potential? High potential. Yeah. So I would expect that at least in the western part of Ukraine, it could be a good contribution. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. So you can see vindkraft is Veterenergia, wind power in Swedish. And I can also say that we have a small hydropower station that we are developing, which goes under the micropower because it's 200 kilowatt and it's the most southern one in Ukraine and the oldest one. It was built 1917. And we are also aligned with NEFCO on this project. So the first picture here, you can see the Black Sea. You can see the turbine, and you can also see the station that we have a technical agreement with the ABB, and everything has been projected by ABB in Sweden. So, and we have tried to implement world standard on whatever we do. As you can see in the title, it's slightly different also from what is in the program because I have added challenges ahead, because there are many challenges ahead. How do I get to the next? This, yeah?
This one is not working, okay?
Yeah, good. Who are we? We are entrepreneur, 4 Swedish entrepreneurs and businessmen. And my own background is I was leading the team who was building up the Tetra Pak business in Ukraine, and I came here in 1994. I'm also one of the co-founders of NUCC, which is a cannery factory in the south of Ukraine. We have 1,000 employees, and we operate in the Kherson region. Particularly from my side, there was a private interest in renewables. I grew up on a farm in Sweden, and we had a small hydro plant, and I always was fascinated by this. And as we all know, that when you can turn dreams into reality is a big part of life. Kherson region, why Kherson region? Because we live there, we operate there, and our managing director now in our company, Carl Sturen, who is also the Swedish honorary consul in the south of Ukraine, has been sitting through 15 governors, and who knows when he's going to be 16. That means that we have the network, we know all the people, and people talk a lot about the subject about corruption in Ukraine. Yes, there is a lot of corruption in Ukraine, but the real way of getting business done here is to spend time with people, get to know people, and then you can actually reach your goals without committing to corruption. If you come in here and pay money, you are a loser, and you will leave without your money. We have actually an extensive business track record here. We're hungry for new challenges, and when the new 2009, the green tariff, that has been mentioned before, came, that was a very good incentive for us, because still we are businessmen and we want to make money on what we are doing. Why the south of Ukraine? You can see here the wind map. The strongest one is the red, and the brown is the next strongest. And we happen to be in the brown area. So the next step, we define the area, and you can see I have marked it here. This coincides where we are operating, they coincides with good winds. So we studied international expertise, and I actually have privately a wind turbine in Sweden also, which I set up close to my farm. And so I knew the procedure on how you have to measure. There is an international framework for data management, so you can get credit worthy in the banks. And so we built the mast by ourselves in the local workshop, 100-meter mast, and started to measure and found out that the wind was good. Then we came to implementation, and as we know, it's very easy to say, here is the ground, here is a wind turbine, let's put it up and let's start producing. But the devil is in the details, and there are a lot of them. So we decided to start small, because as very often in life, learning by doing is the only really good way of doing things, and also to manage the risks. So start small, learn big. And that, I can say, goes to the contrary of the other players in Ukraine, and therefore you have very few players who have succeeded. And the people who have succeeded are Wind Power of Ukraine and DTEC, and they are huge players in this country. When we are ready, we scaled up from 1 turbine and then to 3 turbines, and now we have 10 turbines. The financing is a huge challenge. In the first one, we took our own equity, and then we went to the bank, and then we have also continued with the banks. It's very difficult to get through the Ukrainian business process. It takes a lot of effort, knowledge, contacts, sweat, crying, laughing. It's basically a challenge. We selected our business partners. We know that we have all the problems here, so we didn't want to have other problems, so we selected Vestas as the biggest in the world, and who only do wind. And we selected ABB, where we had contacts before and who we know are competent. And through a handshake with these people, we started. And 11 months after the handshake, the first turbine was operating. Here is the process. It's very hands-on. I have the title of chairman, but I was from the beginning a managing partner of this venture. All local sub-suppliers who we have to teach what to do. So pouring concrete, building foundations, and all this. And here is a new definition of being on the top. Yeah. So overviewing the concrete being poured in the proper way. So we are very into detail of everything. And it's quite fun, actually. The first turbine arrived October 2011, and the first production, the February 12th, 2012. Today, you can see our eastern flank, which is too close for comfort to the Crimean border. And we are surrounded by minefields, tanks, military bases. And actually, when Carl Bildt was here, I took him up in the tower, and we looked over this, and it was quite an experience for him also to see the reality down here. The western flank is Novorossiysk. It's the first turbine we did, and in the middle we have built another 4 turbines. So we are along the coast, on the long Black Sea coast. The result in operations, it's quite good. Actually, last month we had a capacity factor of 55% in the parks, and that's huge. Usually, if we have 32, 33, we are happy. So on a yearly basis, we are close to 40% on capacity factor. The reliability of the turbines are good, no problem. Challenges ahead, to summarize. Ukraine is in fact at war. And this, of course, is difficult. We have people whose relatives are dying on a regular basis, unfortunately. So it's a different regime now. There is a lack of unity on the highest political level. This is unfortunately a historical fact for Ukraine. The last 1,000 years, it's always been not unified. No? So let's see what it means for the future. The consequences of this is a troublesome economy, messy politics, lack of national security, and reluctant, to say the least, international financing. I would say NEFCO is a brilliant example on the contrary. But of course, who wants to invest among the tanks? No? It's difficult to prove your case. So I would say that we face today a dramatically high country risk. And we live with this risk. We have taken it from the beginning, and we hope that it will sort it out and things will calm down and we can continue. We have development plans up to 350 megawatt now, and we are ready as soon as we can find financing. Questions on this? Huh? Yep.
We'll have a separate session and panel after lunch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frederick.
I will be speaking on electricity market reform, which is on the way in Ukraine. And first of all, I will provide a brief outline of the existing market, electricity market in Ukraine. And as you probably know, currently and since Soviet times in Ukraine, we have a so-called single buyer model of electricity market, and we have a wholesale market, and which is actually functioning as follows. All producers of electricity, they obliged to sell electricity to the wholesale market, and every supplier company has to buy electricity from the wholesale market. And the wholesale market actually forms the price for such electricity, and based on this price, which is formed on the wholesale market, suppliers companies are buying it and then resell to the end customers. And what is important to note is that under the current regime, there is quite a heavy dependency on regulated tariffs. And this is the main obstacle for development of the electricity market in Ukraine. And some of the suppliers, they are selling electricity based on non-regulated tariffs, for example, for purposes of export and for private large enterprises. But many parts of businesses and communities are supplied of electricity under regulated prices. And these regulated prices, unfortunately, are not market level. And the level of subsidies is tremendous. And the prices which the population and budget entities are paying for electricity, they cover minimum. They don't pay off the price of production of such electricity. What is important to note is that there was a necessity for reformation of the market. And in 2011, Ukraine became a member of the European Energy Community. And one of the requirements of the European Energy Community was a reformation of Ukrainian legislation generally in many sectors of energy, both oil and gas, electricity, renewables, environmental, and other. And in compliance with requirements of membership in this organization, Ukraine adopted in 2013, quite surprisingly, a law which was adopted under the previous regime. It was a law on fundamentals, on functioning principles of the electricity market. And this law, it is partially compliant with principles of European Energy Community. And this law will liquidate the wholesale market, which I described above. And starting 2017, we will have a new market, which will be working as it is declared under free market principles. And for purposes of describing how the new market will be working, you should pay attention that we will have 5 electricity markets which are provided by this new law. And first of all, we will have the market of bilateral agreements which will be where participants of this market will be working on based on bilateral agreements, and they will define a price for such electricity on a contractual level, and the prices will be not regulated, but there are regulations on the quantity of electricity which can be sold based on bilateral agreements. There is a requirement that certain producers and electricity providers, suppliers should obligatory sell some portions of electricity at another market, which is called day-ahead market. And day-ahead market, it is a trading platform which will be the main market for electricity in the future, starting 2017, and this market will be operated by the market operator, which will be established as a spin-off of Energorynak, the company which is now responsible for functioning of the wholesale market. And also we'll have a balancing market, which will be aimed to help fixing issues with imbalances. Retail electricity market, governing relations of supply of electricity to end customers, and in a nutshell, customers will be able to choose their own supplier of electricity, and it might be either an independent supplier or guaranteed supplier. And by saying guaranteed supplier, it will be also partially regulated prices, and this guaranteed supplier will not have powers to refuse this end customer to connect to him and to purchase electricity from him. And another quite interesting market is the market of auxiliary services, which is a new thing, and the main purpose is to provide services related to functioning of the network, of the grid, adjusting frequency, and so mostly technical issues, but still a new feature. And it will be interesting to know how this market will start working in Ukraine. And according to this law, we have a period starting this year until July 2017, when the market will be functioning in a full force. And this period of time, starting 2014, it is called the transitional period. And during this period, we will have the old regime functioning still, the wholesale market, and some new elements of the new law. And it will be the market of auxiliary services and some of the novelties on export and import of electricity. It is important to note that starting this year, actually starting December 1st of this year, according to this law, new provisions on import of electricity will start work, and I, for example, was involved into. I think it is the first deal on import of electricity, which will be functioning based on this law. And another point is starting 2016, there will be 1 year period when it will be possible to test this new system. It will be working during 1 year, and starting July 1st of 2017, it will be the full start of the new liberalized electricity market. It is important to mention what actually has been done already this year after adoption of the law at the end of 2013, and it is quite interesting to mention that we have a quite active work of the government in implementation of the law. The Ministry of Energy and the old regulator established relevant working groups, and it was done based on the provisions of the law. And the Cabinet of Ministers established the coordination center, which will be responsible for implementation of the law and will control various governmental and regulatory bodies, how they will be adjusting their systems for purposes of switching to the new regime. And also the old regulator, National Electricity Regulatory Commission, and the new regulator, which was established in August, National Energy and Communal Services State Regulatory Commission. During the years, they drafted a number of very important draft regulations which are aiming to adjust our energy market to the new regime, and they drafted changes to licensing rules, regulation on the market of auxiliary services, regulations related to export and import of electricity. So a lot of work have been done, but still there are some challenges, and what we have mentioned is that there are some delays in the implementation of some plans which were scheduled for this year, and some of the deadlines have not been met or likely to be delayed. For example, during this year, still some of the procedures have not been adopted. For example, the procedure for adoption of the National Plan for Development of the Market for 10 years. And it is a quite important document because starting 2015, it will not be possible to get a green tariff without adoption of such plan. So it is kind of a circle, and potentially, if we look into perspective, yes, we understand that it is a difficult situation in Ukraine, it is a war, but we can expect delays in implementation of the law, and there is certain risk that by 2017 the new market will not start working in full operation. Also, another problem is that there is a negative lobby, so to say, from nuclear and hydro energy generators, which are not happy with this law, because this law provides some burdensome provisions on them and force them to contribute certain amount of their profits, and instead of investing into updating their generating facilities, they have to pay a great share of their profits to so-called fund of settlement of imbalances, which is aiming to cover subsidies and cover green tariff. And they again these provisions, and we'll see what they will achieve in their fight. And another point is that it is also not surprised that European Energy Community Secretariat is not really happy with wording of the new law, and they say that it is not really compliant with the third package. And what they did is they developed their own draft of the law, which is based on EU directives, and they sent this draft law to the Ministry of Energy for consideration. And based on this, I do not exclude that potentially in the nearest future, a year or so, we can expect changes to this law, and I hope that these changes will be for better. With this, that's all, and I think it is. Thank you very much.
As you may know, Statoil is the second largest marketer of natural gas in Europe. We have customers in many different European countries, and since October we added Naftogaz of Ukraine to that list. In my talk today, I have three key messages that I would like to bring. First, market liberalization has been key to opening up the Northwest European gas markets and making them more integrated and competitive. This is a process that has been beneficial to both consumers and producers. We ourselves in Statoil have played an important part in this transformation. We have converted most of our gas contracts away from oil indexation, and we are selling more and more gas on the traded markets or hubs, and also selling directly to end consumers. And thirdly, we believe that liberalization will be a success factor, also for the markets in Central and Eastern Europe. A reformed market will be key to diversify your gas supplies and also to provide cost-efficient and secure supplies. If you allow me first to say a couple of words about Statoil and about Norway's role as a key supplier of gas to Europe. In 2013, the Norwegian export of gas reached over 100 billion cubic meters, which is nearly 25% of the demand in the EU. As a marketer of both our own production and the Norwegian state's gas, Statoil accounted for about 2/3 of this sale. And this makes us the second biggest seller of gas to Europe. The gas from the Norwegian continental shelf is connected to the European gas market through a number of pipelines to the European continent. Norwegian gas reserves in existing fields are large and represent around 20 times the annual production from the Norwegian continental shelf. Statoil has invested heavily in the development of new gas fields. And the next field to come on stream is the Aasta-Hansteen field just north of the Arctic Circle. It will come into production in 2017. We're also building a pipeline from that area, north of the Arctic Circle, connecting with the main system on the Norwegian continental shelf and onward to the European market. It is also expected that there are still large undiscovered gas resources on the Norwegian continental shelf. In some, it is estimated that only 1/3 of total resources have been produced so far. We are running continuous exploration campaigns aimed at discovering and producing these resources. In recent years, we have seen important changes in the European gas markets. These changes are related to EU's efforts to liberalize and create one single and integrated market for energy. As a part of this transformation, old monopolies have been challenged and traditional value chains have been unbundled, according to EU's third energy package. More third-party access to transportation capacities has supported competition between gas suppliers, and an increasing amount of gas is now traded on liquid marketplaces or hubs. From a system of long-term supply contracts based on oil index prices, we have seen the emergence of a more gas market-driven price, which is increasingly reflective of the supply-demand situation. Physical connectivity has been increased and bottlenecks have been removed. This has reduced price differences between markets. If you look at the figure on the bottom, you can see the convergence of prices in some of Europe's markets. In some, the liberalization of the European markets has led to a more efficient and predictable market. This benefits both consumers and producers. For consumers, because a competitive market in general means lower prices and more security. For producers, because a liquid market removes risk and gives predictable incentives for new investments. The changes in the markets have also had implications for Statoil and the way we sell our gas. At a very early stage, we realized that the old system of long-term contracts with oil-linked prices could no longer be sustained because it did not reflect the new realities in the market. Now we have transformed almost all our long-term contracts so that the price is linked to the price formation in the traded markets. At the same time, we're increasingly using the traded markets for optimization and balancing our portfolio and as an outlet for gas. Third-party access to infrastructure and unbundling of the value chain is enabling us to move downward in the value chain and sell gas directly to end consumers, such as power plants, local utilities, and large industrials. It also enables us to reach customers in new parts of Europe. And our recent contract with Naftagaz is an example of that. The gas liberalization of the northwest European markets has largely been a success story, strengthening both competitiveness and security of supply for gas. What would it take for Central and Eastern Europe to reach the same level of maturity? There are three success factors that I would like to point out. First is physical interconnections. To facilitate a liquid market with more diverse supply routes, it is necessary to strengthen the ability to move gas in the north-south axis and to ensure reverse eastward flow. In this context, we welcome the projects of common interest as an important tool to strengthen the gas markets in Central and Eastern Europe. Another example is the infrastructure in LNG developments, as seen, for instance, in Lithuania. All of these will lead to a more competitive market and eventually also to more energy security. The second success factor will be to create reliable and transparent price signals and sufficient liquidity to facilitate trade. In Northwest Europe, the liquidity of the markets arose on the back of unbundling of traditional value chains, creating more competition and creating access for new players in the marketplace. This resulted in a functional gas hub with adequate liquidity. This is a path that also the countries in Central and Eastern Europe should follow. The third factor is to build down regulatory challenges for new players. As a gas seller or transporter in Central or Eastern European countries, we are often faced with complicated rules, regulations, and procedures. Even for a larger gas company, these barriers can be difficult to overcome. For smaller players, the challenges may be insurmountable. An important factor for success is therefore to reduce the hurdles for entry in these national markets. Finally, to summarize, Statoil is Europe's second largest seller of gas. Our home market lies in northwest Europe, based on the proximity to our production on the Norwegian continental shelf. However, we are keeping an open door for business opportunities based on development of the market throughout the whole of Europe. The liberalization of northwest European gas markets has created a more efficient market to the benefit of both producers and suppliers. This is a development that we welcome and which we have been part of. Eastern and Central Europe have not come as far in this development. While there are still large challenges to be overcome, the gains of achieving a more liquid and functional gas market are substantial. More competitive prices and strengthened energy security. Thank you for your attention.
And let me start from the slide that probably everybody has seen in one way or another. Let's not attach ourselves to the figures or their exactness, but the tendency or the trends, how things are developing. Up until now, we have seen the large proportion of gas in Ukraine being imported. Meanwhile, the local production has been more or less stagnant or even shrinking to some points. And in our perspective, in our thinking, and this has been also stressed, of course, by the Prime Minister earlier today, and overall is included in the development program for the country, support and increasing domestic production is one of the key parameters in the country. What are the advantages of the domestic production? I mean, those are very obvious. I'm just going to go through them very briefly. Employment of the local personnel, local people. Bringing in new technologies, modernizing existing ones. Tax contributions, both on the national level as well as on the regional ones. We, for example, are operating in the 22 regions, so we're contributing taxes both on the national level as well as onto the 22 regions in Ukraine. And fourth point, positive effects on Ukrainian balance of payments. In nowadays, when there is such a hard pressure on the domestic currency in Ukraine, this, what we are advocating, increase of the local production could be also one of the supporting factors. And of course, final point is minimization of foreign influence and support at the same time to the Ukrainian energy independence. So there are a few ways of how to structure local production. Our particular way, and what I've been called here to present, is the joint activity. This is the technical setup, how we are working in Ukraine. We are headed by the public company in Scandinavia that is listed on Stockholm Stock Exchange via our daughter companies in Sweden and in Ukraine. We have a joint activity reached with the Ukrainian state company Ukrgasvidobывание for the production profit actually sharing agreement basis in Ukraine. What it is, it's the net profit after tax sharing. It's only sharing of the profits that come above the baseline that has been agreed with the state, meaning that the investor brings in all of the investment and we are only taking part that is incremental or additional to what has been produced up until we came in and we brought in our know-how and our investments. We have the legally binding agreement where we as an investor are carrying certain very strict obligations. And the primary task, of course, is modernization of existing depleted fields. And why this is so crucial and might be interesting and needed for the Ukrainian side is basically that this allows gas to be sold at the market prices. As you know, state production company Ukrgasvodobывание is regulated by the state laws, allowing them to supply gas only under the subsidized prices. Meanwhile, in the structure of joint activity agreement of private producers, where they do not carry formal control, they are exempt of this requirement, and we are allowed as the joint activity to sell gas on the market prices, bring in the revenue, and reinvest everything into the projects in Ukraine. No dividends has been paid so far, and will be probably paid only in the years to come. This is sort of the visual structure of our setup. We have the Swedish side as the listed company once again that brings in technology, access to the financial markets, and we carry responsibility for implementing 22 projects with the total investment of 650 more or less, give or take million US dollars. Then we have our daughter company, Karpatygas in Ukraine, that is responsible for implementing the project, that has employed the relevant personnel and supervises everything on the ground. And we have our state partner, Ukrgasvodobывание, the owner of the licenses and permits, and they are actually contributing those projects. So the setup is that the state brings in their resources in the format of the licenses and access to the fields. We construct, we bring in the money, our know-how, we construct infrastructure, we produce gas, and we share it on the equal basis. Our investment program, $649 million, is more or less roughly split into 4 parts. Two of the major ones is stimulation of depleted wells, working over on them. Another part is construction of booster compressor stations, because anybody who has been following what is happening in the Ukrainian gas market are aware that fields are depleting, pressure is dropping. There is a certain technical, sounding simple, but it's a very challenging process of increasing pressure on the on-surface infrastructure. So that is what we are focusing on. Those are the fields where we're operating on. We have 147 wells that are located all over Ukraine. When we started the project, it was in the middle of 2011, there was one well producing from 147, and at the production rate of 30,000 cubic meters of gas per day. As of mid of this year, we have managed to work over and put in the production 46 additional wells. So total production right now is run from 47 wells, and we just reached the production volume of 2 million cubic meters of gas per day. Those are just sort of technical slides. I mean, a lot of our projects that we receive looked like a greenfield project where we needed to employ GPS technologies to locate the depleted field that was decommissioned, for example, this one in 1985, to find the well, open it up, renovate it, work over, and put it in the production. We also did some horizontal drilling. That is a challenging process. And so that's one part of our investment program, wells. Stimulation of depleted or closed-down wells. Second part of our investment program is booster compressor station, constructions of those, adding pressure to the system. We have 13 of those obliged to build from scratch. The very title page of my presentation carried the photo of the brand new installation that we managed to construct in Ukraine. Those are the locations of our booster compressor stations. Of course, out of those, one is standing in the area that is sort of questionable right now for the security and safety. All the works have been stopped there. We usually receive questions, are we affected? The answer is yes, we are. Coming back to what has been done so far, our biggest achievement after 2 years of operating, investing, constructing in Ukraine, we managed to open the first brand new booster compressor station in Ukraine, which is located in the Ulevsky field. That is about 50 to 80 kilometers from Kharkov. What it does allows maintaining operational parameters for the whole field. So it's not only that we built it for the sake of our project and that we're going to be using it for the sake of producing gas only in the framework of our project. No, this has been done to facilitate the production on all of that field. Out of that, as you can see, facilitation is in the range of about 50 million cubic meters per gas per month. Out of that, only 10 is considered to be incremental, and that's attributable to our project. The pipeline of the projects to come, out of those 13 booster compressor stations, we commissioned 2 more during the summer on the smaller scale. This is the actual photo of what has been done. 3 more are being on the way. We hope, due to the, of course, unfortunate events in Ukraine, we might be forced to extend our commissioning dates into the next year. And our major right now focus is on the construction of the Kristyshe booster compressor station. That's is going to be one of the largest key installations of that kind in Ukraine. And that is the actual photo of the work in progress. Actually, everything looks much more advanced right now. This has been a photo from the late spring. Few more of the compressing stations coming up. Those are actual photos also from our sites. By carrying out this project, those 22 projects, or our whole investment program, we are engaging a number of partners, both domestic in Ukraine as well as international. Since we are under the umbrella of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Forum, I would like to point out our 2 very close partners in Norway. That is investment bank ABG Sundal Collier, that is helping us a lot on the financial markets, and then the AGR, that is the service company that we've been working with in assessing the reserve base allocated to our project. Just one of the concluding slides, the production, how it has been sort of growing due to the applied investments. And once again, I mean, it's sort of simple. You can say, okay, you bring in the money, you build in, and here is the production skyrocketing. But remember in what kind of environment we're operating, and being in the partnership with the state, it made, of course, life maybe easier, but at the same time maybe more challenging. The state didn't contribute financially to this project. Once again, we're receiving usually questions about it. State only gave us an access to the fields where we invested money and reinvested money afterwards that we of course, generated in the process of producing gas. So during the period of 3 years, summary slide, we employed 200 people in 4 regions in Ukraine. I'm just coming back to my initial slide of the advantages of what is the domestic production. I mean, we're all celebrating here a nice signing of another import to Ukraine, which was absolutely great for diversification of the imports. But what about domestic production? So just with our project, 200 people have been employed in Ukraine. 57 wells have been put into the production and worked over. 3 booster compressor stations have been commissioned, and 10 more are to come. We built 11 metering units that provide substantial accuracy improvements on measuring the gas supplied into the pipeline. During the summer, we celebrated a benchmark symbolic for us as the project. We managed to produce during a 3-year period of time 1.5 billion cubic meters of natural gas that otherwise would have not been produced if our project was not taking place here in Ukraine. We have invested by middle of this year 2.5 more or less billion hryvnias, and we have paid almost corresponding amount. I mean, it might sound very similar, and you might ask, are those the same sort of evening it out? No, those are two separate items on our balance sheet. We paid 2.5 more or less billion in taxes in Ukraine. I mean, overall, we're speaking about roughly 5 billion hryvnias that have been sort of just occurred in Ukraine. And my sort of just rhetorical question, what is an alternative to that? Paying to Gazprom, others, that stayed here. Thank you so much.
Sihoyev, who is a partner at Marchenko Donovich, so welcome. And then we also have Mr. Amund Beitnes, we have from NEFCO, Kjell Rep, and our final panelist, Mr. Petrenko, we are unfortunately missing, but I'm sure these four gentlemen will serve us well.
So the question that we have for the panelists is, can Ukraine's energy independence policy to succeed? And maybe if you could, each of the panelists could offer his view on, on the few points that Ukraine's government and the state in general has to do in order to succeed in this energy independence policy, which I don't think it's clear enough yet. But if you could offer your view as to what kind of steps and things we need to do to achieve that in each of the sectors. So Robert represents mostly oil and gas sector, maybe part of the power generation as well. Then the energy efficiency sector, the renewable energy sector. Just offer your view, what do you think is right to do for Ukraine in these circumstances, and what kind of energy independence policy you would expect from the state. And then we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. Thank you.
I've been here a long time, about 15 years. And I have never seen in this 15-year period of time as difficult as Ukraine has been to operate. And I've owned 3 oil and gas companies. I own quarter interest in Donbas Energo, which is one of the generation facilities that's here, electricity companies that's here in Ukraine. I've run companies, I've invested in them. I've never seen a more inept energy policy, more confused, less attractive to invest in a 15-year period of time. This government likes to blame the war effort. I don't believe that. I think they have absolutely no idea what to do with regard to how to create any energy type of independence, either in the oil and gas sector, in the electricity sector. The Prime Minister earlier this morning spoke of the need to attract investment and the need to attract additional companies to come in to develop wind, to develop the independent energy oil and gas sector. Yet the laws that they pass further monopolize Naftogaz. They talk about liberalizing the market. Again, the laws that they passed and the decrees that happen, which always seem to happen on a Friday night after 12 o'clock, so nobody knows about it until Tuesday. They do nothing but further constrict access to the pipeline system. They do nothing but further restrict access to the liberalized market. They talk about signing the energy charter and the things that they're going to do with regard to signing the energy charter, the reforms that they're going to make. Their actions speak otherwise. I was interested and then ultimately amused with Energy Minister Prodan's comments. Everything that he stated, he hasn't done. He hasn't done anything to liberalize the coal market. I wish he was here. I was very upset to see him leave because these are things that he knows. And this is a very, very difficult energy market right now. This country has significant potential, has significant oil potential, has significant gas potential. There are quite a few of you here that are making investments that are probably as frustrated, maybe more so, maybe less so, with regard to the investments that you've made in electricity or wind. There is a lot of potential here. The war, obviously, the economy, obviously, has delayed plans. It has completely shut the capital markets down. But the laws that are being passed, the reforms, as they call them, that are being made, are doing absolutely nothing whatsoever to attract any investment into this country, a country that's known for corruption in the energy business, and a country that's known for lack of access. And so until that's resolved, until that's fixed, you know, independent oil and gas companies, Meeson, which has put a significant amount of money into the country, as was just evidence, will continue to struggle in this country, will not be able to raise additional capital, will not be able to increase gas production because of the just basically the confusing and conflicting energy strategy that the country has at this point.
People start to go to jail.
Well, and until we start yelling and screaming about this, I mean,
Singapore Prime Minister pushes two closest friends into jail, and then the change started. That's what we need in Ukraine.
I mean,
thank you.
I had somebody, I forget who it was, I apologize to this person, but they came up to me and said, how's Ukraine now? Is it better? I said, it's worse than it's ever been. This is the most corrupt government that I have ever dealt with. And that's saying a lot based on the goofball that's sitting in Rostov-on-Don. Everything that Yatsenyuk and his group is doing with regard to my industry is consolidation of gas supply. That's it. With regard to Yanukovych and others, they left industries alone. They stole however you wanted to find it. But if you were an independent producer, if you were an independent business, they more or less left you alone. Unless, of course, you wanted to expand into a government project, and then, of course, they took a piece of your ass, which is what that is going to end up happening anyway. What's happening right now is you have complete consolidation of everything. So again, as executives, we have a duty to ourselves, to our fellow colleagues in business, and to our investors to say how it is and let people make their own decisions based on that. Not, hey, I've got this great company, everything's really great. You need to expose the warts as well, because they're there, and you need to tell them now as opposed to having them find out about it. And that was a speech more to myself than anyone else. I apologize. I get on a soapbox a lot, so please, I now quiet.
Thank you for those engaged and entertaining words as well.
Have 5 minutes for everybody.
5 minutes for everybody.
After Robert's introduction. So if we could have your views in 5 minutes, and then maybe we'll still have some time to discuss.
Yeah, I'll just comment quickly. I mean, to a sense, I agree that you should, hope for the best and prepare for the worst, and that's also something you do, being an investor. But let's look at the half full glass instead of the half empty one, and I'll say something about what I'm qualified for, and that's looking at energy efficiency, where I've said quite a lot, but I didn't say so much about the things that I need should be done and challenges. I could mention that I see that, yes, potential need, but also we see that municipalities have somewhat, there's a limitation in their competence and ability to describe their needs. We have donors now queuing up to help Ukraine, but you might have municipalities who are unable to actually define their needs. We have EU launching a small grants initiative. Let's see if we're able to put that into real life. Supporting that, for that you need qualified advisory services, you need consultants. We've been able to find some with whom we are working, but there's clearly a need for more. Ukrainian competent advisors in the field. And also, when building new buildings, we are refurbishing old ones, but when building new buildings, you need building norms and rules which actually gives incentives for building it right and energy efficient from the beginning. And that is somewhere where there's room for development. Can I say something about renewables as well? There's a lot of buzz about switching to biomass for the moment. And basically, to be able to do that, you'll have to, one, have capacity of producing it, and you need supply of the biomass. And the good news for Ukraine is that you have supplies. I mean, there's an export going on to the EU. I've heard some describe that as a problem because everything goes away, but it's provided that there's capacity, there's a market and a need for it, a demand, then probably the prices will allow this production to stay in Ukraine and fill the Ukrainian boilers. So I think it's a possibility there. So a little bit more optimistic on my fields, but
hey, I live here, man. I can't be anything but half glass full.
Maxim Soyev, Marchenko Danevich Law Firm. I will talk from a legal perspective more. I fully agree with the first speaker about tough situation in the oil and gas market. Maybe I will not use the same words, but I do agree that we need at the legislative level liberalize this market and not restrict gas supply as was mentioned. There is an issue in Ukraine which we need to address, is increased royalty payments for private producers, which were increased in August, and still there are discussions that these royalty payments are too, this tax is too high to create enough incentives for oil and gas production, and that should be dialogue, not again one-side decision as it was in August from the government. We want to see this tax, and views of the business was not taken into account. We noticed that if you want to government listen to your suggestions, you need to arrange kind of small Maidan near the parliament, and then they hear us, like it was in the case of agricultural companies. They forced the parliament and the cabinet minister to not reduce tax breaks for agricultural companies. We need a new subsoil code, which is considered, I don't know how many, has been considered how many years, but still in the parliament, and we reviewed I don't know how many times, and Vitaly and other participants this subsoil code, and it's still not adopted. That should be done, that's for sure. Regarding renewables, NEFCO mentioned that the first animal farm received feed-in tariff from biogas, and we discussed briefly. Yes, it was our firm helped this farm to get it, but it took more than 1 year. More than 1 year. It should be like a matter of months, not years. Then they got feed-in tariff, but still they have an issue. They cannot sell electricity at feed-in tariff because they cannot use silo together with pig manure, because the Ukrainian legislation prohibits to use energy crops for the purpose of feed-in tariff. So such stupid things in the legislation on renewables like this one. We have still local content requirement in the Ukrainian legislation on renewables, which should be also abolished to create incentives and make development of sustainable market of renewables. In energy efficiency field, we need, as we also discussed, the possibility of ESCO contracts, long-term contracts for municipalities. Now we have an issue that municipalities can pay only, according to the budget code, only undertake obligations to pay within 1 calendar year. Usually ESCO projects, they are up to 5 years, they are long-term. And we need, first of all, legislation which is elaborated but has not been adopted on ESCO companies, and the possibility for these long-term contracts. If we talk about energy efficiency, I also would like to address the issue, like maybe not energy in general, it's the issue with financing energy projects. Now the energy projects in Ukraine not moving forward. We have big issues with currency regulation restrictions, with restrictions on financing, taking money out of Ukraine. If we don't liberalize this area also there will be a big issue to attract investments in the energy sector, because it's very dependent on foreign investments, on foreign loans. Many projects are linked to euro, and if you cannot exit from this project, it creates a big risk. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Would you like
Okay.
to comment?
I know very little about the energy policy of Ukraine, and I know very little about gas. So on this background, it's very difficult to answer the question. But I think that even if Ukraine has a lot of nuclear power and a lot of gas, and with these two sources maybe could be defined as independent, I think it will still not be independent, because based on only two sources, it would the country would be very vulnerable, and it would never be independent. And I think the biggest challenge is to get an energy mix which includes a number of energy sources, also renewables. And with introducing this and slowly developing this energy mix, you will also fulfill the international obligations in accordance with IPCC's recommendations, all that. So I think it's extremely important now to really start developing or continue developing the renewables. I was talking about hydropower earlier today, and I was informed that there are more than 100 small hydropower stations in Ukraine. But some years ago, it was 1,000 small-scale hydropower stations in Ukraine. So what happened to these 900? Maybe they are still there. They could be renovated in short time. So this, together with biomass, and we also learned earlier today that in the southern part of Ukraine, there is a lot of wind potential. I don't know about the rest of Ukraine, but I suppose that the wind should be fairly good in most of Ukraine, at least close to the Black Sea, and maybe also in the western part to the Carpathian Mountains. But my last message is to make sure that you have an energy mix to secure the energy, to have energy security. Base it on only gas or nuclear or one source. That's not planning for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, assuming we can get past the political hurdles that have been very clearly pointed out, and which I think a number of people in the room also recognize in various forms and shapes, there are opportunities that need to be followed up. Can we hear from the audience? Are there any questions to the panel, or any comments comments to the panel or to previous speakers?
We've heard from the panels some pessimistic comments, and it is true that some of the decisions of the new government is not economic. It is, from my perspective, it is at some point potentially, maybe partially, dictated by the current situation in Ukraine. But if we look into a general picture, we forgot to mention about positive things which have been done, and I think that we should pay attention that right now we have first good examples of import of energy resources from Europe, which have not been done before. It is several steps on on energy independence from Russia. And for Ukraine, it is better to be less independent from Russia, but dependent on European Union, because we can be sure that if we are dependent on European Union, this dependency would be of economical nature. If there is a price on the energy trade platforms and Ukraine should pay it, it will be economical price. And we have example of...
Is there a question?
It is a common. Just a positive one, comparing to what have been mentioned to the panel. And the question to the panel: do you see anything positive in actions of the government?
Okay, I understand. With regard to are these good policies or not, with regard to the increase in tax, they're clearly not. If you want it, the argument is we're going to increase the tax revenue of the state. Okay, well that'll last a quarter. And then that's it, because everyone stops drilling. You have two good examples in this room as to how to increase tax revenues from oil and gas production. You've got Meeson sitting right next to you, guy's spending $1 billion hryvnia, increasing production, and he's willing to spend and wants to spend more money because he has 26 license areas to develop. They're putting money into these assets. They're increasing production. They should be hand over fist giving Meeson opportunities to continue, because that's a contract that's there, that's ready. It's a Ukrainian-run business. They can knock it out very quickly. You have the 6 or 7 large oil and gas producers, of which I own one of them. Same situation. You reduce our taxes, boy, are we drilling a lot of wells, and taxes increase, and that attracts investment. But the response that we get from the government is, you're making too much money. That's what capitalism is. Isn't that what you want to be? You want to be a democratic country? You want to be part of Europe? You don't socialize everything. You don't take everything, and that's what they're doing. It's just completely bad policy. Can't defend any of this. Not in my wildest dreams.
Yeah, if we talk about oil and gas, I agree. The picture has changed that much. But if we talk about energy efficiency, Mr. Savchuk was here, State Energy Efficiency Agency, and he managed within 2-3 months to adopt through the Cabinet of Ministers 6 resolutions which stimulate energy efficiency. If we consider previous year, we could expect 1 resolution within 2 years. Nobody cared about energy efficiency in Ukraine. Now we see, at least in the area of energy efficiency, there are some positive changes. Yeah, there may be some ironic comments about that. Sorry?
Nothing, not
bad. So, and I saw in practice that those incentives, they started working, stimulating tariffs for production of heat from resources other than natural gas. They started working. We expect for households some stimulating programs, they started working. And if we keep on working in this direction, I think energy efficiency will develop in Ukraine. But we have, I agree, some contradictions and contradictory practices. For instance, we got higher taxes for oil and gas. And the rationale for that, we need to finance energy efficiency, we need to finance the budget. On the other hand, the Ministry of Finance says we don't have money for energy efficiency programs. So why do you raise taxes for production of gas and in this way to want to reduce consumption, but you don't invest this money in reduction of consumption of heat and natural gas? These problems we still have, and we tackle them, and hopefully the approach will be changed in the future.
I thought that we talk much more about energy efficiency and energy saving, because when we are talking about energy consumption and production, it's very nice to speak about market just from supply side, but we should think about demand side. And of course, demand side is connected with energy efficiency and energy saving. And this is additional source. And of course, to consume just for consumption, it's good for suppliers and for generating companies. But from demand side, we should think about how to consume smart. How to consume and cover our energy needs with renewable energy sources, and how to secure and to satisfy the quality of electricity from renewable energy sources, and to make a reliable and stable and sustainable connection with final energy consumers from demand side. And of course, in this case, probably from some, yes, I'm talking about electricity market. And probably in this case, smart and efficient energy consumption from final, or even not final energy consumers will reduce our dependence from gas and oil. Of course, it's not very nice, probably, for suppliers, but it will be good for renewable technologies. And probably we need to improve our energy efficiency market. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, when you've narrowed it down to electricity, I was forced to start thinking, because then you're, for heat it's easy. You said we're working to first you give the customers an ability to regulate the heat, and you give them a meter, so that then you have both the opportunity and the motivation to reduce your costs. In terms of electricity, I suppose that everybody has a meter already, and the incentive to save energy, depending on the tariffs you're paying, though. If you do pay the full tariffs, then of course you will see the result on your bill, and if you top it up with a little bit of an educational effort in terms of informing people on how to behave and which small things they can do to save electricity, I suppose you're at least taking a couple of steps in the direction you're asking for.
Yeah, and about I saw 50,000 energy efficiency connecting, and about your directive, and about the standard about energy management systems. What do you think about, is it important to implement energy management systems? I saw 50,000 for Ukraine to improve, to make system approach for improvement energy efficiency.
Well, now I suppose you're talking about businesses and how they should act, and in that sense, well, I'm not an expert on government policies. I try to say as little as possible on how the government should act. But I think that looking to Europe and inspiring your legislation by the existing systems there would be a wise thing to do.
Because NUCC had a lot of projects connected with municipality, but it wasn't like a whole project with energy management systems. Because if we are talking about long-term projects, we need to reduce energy consumption with connection with a power plant. If you just make good insulation for school, it doesn't mean that boiler will use small amount of oil or gas, because it's not very sensitive to one school.
Well, it sounds like we can talk afterwards, and we can see if that's something NEFCO can do, or perhaps if there's somebody we can connect to that in order to, prepare the ground to get a synergy with the NEFCO project. Because we have some areas we can work with, and there are some areas where we need help from other actors working on education and preparing the ground.
Thank you. I think we will leave it for discussion afterwards.
Just a quick comment. The best way to increase energy efficiency in Ukraine is to increase tariffs for households. It's not popular topic, yes. But unfortunately, I gave an example. I was asked, how much do I pay for electricity? My electricity bill per month, €1. I'm not a good example, but €1, it's possible, even less with current currency exchange rate. Okay, €2, €3, but still, like it's not market price. If we had market price, then consumers, household, they would consider how to decrease their energy efficiency, set up meters, etc.
Just one comment from Mr. Rapp at the end.
Energy efficiency. It's not only in the household, but it's also in the hydropower station. And I've seen so many hydropower stations around the world who are running at a capacity of only 10% of its optimum. And I think that maybe these 200 hydropower stations at present, maybe they could produce the double of what they are doing today by renovation, new turbines, things like that. Thank you.